Hi everyone, this is Connor, host of Chills and Thrills podcast. I just wanted to let you guys know that I did have some mic issues on this episode early on, so if you just bear with us through the first 10 or 12 or so minutes, that it does correct itself and we do get it figured out. Just wanted to let you guys know, so hopefully you'll stay with us through that little hiccup that we had, and hope you enjoy the episode. In March 1994, Crichton said that he had a story idea for another book, which would then be adapted into a film. At the time, Spielberg had not committed to directing the new novel's film adaptation, as he planned to take a year off from directing. In March 1995, Michael Crichton was nearly finished writing the second novel, scheduled for release later that year. Steven Spielberg had signed on to produce the film adaptation, with filming to begin in 1996 for release the following year. Spielberg was busy with his new DreamWorks studio and had not decided if he would direct the film, saying, "I'd love to direct it, but I just have to see. My life is changing." A production team was assembled by mid-1995 as Crichton was finishing the second novel titled The Lost World. Simultaneously, Spielberg and Koepp were developing their own ideas for the screenplay. Crichton's novel was published that September, and Spielberg was announced as the director 2 months later for his 1997 film, The Lost World, Jurassic Park.
Oh, yeah. That's how it always starts. But then later there's running and screaming.
Let them fight.
You're a wizard, Harry.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. I'll be back.
Death has come to your little town, Jude.
Welcome back to another episode of Chills and Thrills on the Jurassic Park franchise. Your host Connor here, along with my co-host Chris, and today we are doing The Lost World, Jurassic Park. So this, coming off of the first film, it's very hard to even come close to that first Jurassic Park film, and I think Steven Spielberg, I think he did it. I loved this film as a young kid. This is the one that I said that I probably watched the most because of just all the T-Rex scenes in it, the T-Rex in San Diego and attacking the trailer. And there's so much more T-Rex in this film, at least I feel like there is, than the first film. And you're never gonna get a better Jurassic Park film than that first one, in my opinion. But this one does a very good job at being a worthy sequel. So, this was one of my favorites as a kid, and rewatching it, I had a blast rewatching it. I love these films, and this is just one of those ones that I can very easily go back to. We get uh, Jeff Goldblum as Ian Malcolm back, and he's pushed into the star role this time, and a couple other good side characters as well. And it's a fun time. And Chris, I don't know. I'm kind of curious to see how you feel about this one.
Yeah. Worthy sequel, I think, is a fair description. I would not call it an unworthy sequel. It's not a bad movie. It's all relative to kind of, when you think that the first movie's kind of about as perfect of a version of itself as it could be. It's kind of hard for this. I don't think this is a perfect version of what this movie could be, if that makes sense. If the first Jurassic reached its maximum potential of its concept, this one doesn't feel like it quite gets there. It feels a little bit there. It's just for it's like an 80 or 90% perfect kind of a thing. For all, Spielberg's naturally an extremely talented director, and his usual instincts are just so on point in terms of the camera movement or the framing and blocking of a scene, and the character work, and the movement through the film and pacing and things like that are generally quite strong, but they'll just be kind of like just some choices that it's like maybe this was at a script level, maybe this was at an editorial level, maybe there was just something that didn't quite jive in the structure of it all, and so it's just it feels a little less fine tuned than the first one, a little less totally dialed in. And as we kind of go into the discussion of the movie, some of that stuff will come up. And in some parts, I don't like to say things like Spielberg was phoning it in, but I mean, I think he even said at some point that it felt a little unfulfilling making this one, that he felt like he was just kind of making a summer popcorn movie. And there's aspects to that where it feels like that's kind of just what he's doing. And now even a Spielberg summer popcorn movie is really, 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 really great, but it's not that kind of decade defining masterpiece that the first movie was. So it's like not a bad movie, not hating on it, but it's definitely it's got some shortcomings.
Yeah, I mean, he, as in Steven Spielberg, he didn't want to do a second Jurassic Park film, and then he kind of got more into it and warmed up to the idea over time, and then finally,
They cut the check, so to speak.
yeah, yeah, pretty much. And that, I mean, for not wanting to do a second film, I mean, the when it comes to the second Jurassic Park or the Lost World Jurassic Park, I mean, the special effects are once again top tier in this film. I mean, the characters give it their all. The directing is very well done by Steven Spielberg. And it's just, I mean, it's a little longer than the first one, and I for some reason, I don't know why, but when I've talked to people before about the Jurassic Park franchise, like this, a lot of people I've talked to, even they dislike this one even more than 3. Like those are usually like the top 2 answers that I get.
There are interesting contrasts between this and the third one, and I haven't rewatched the third one recently, but one thing I will say is I think the third one is something like 90 minutes long. I think the third one is less than 100 minutes. So the one thing that the third one has going for it is that it's a very simple plot in terms that it doesn't do a lot in terms of like franchise building and lore and things like that. It's kind of this like in a bottle plot line. Yeah, it's 92 minutes with credits. And so it moves at an insane pace. That's very short for a movie like these. And so the third one has all these kind of superficial things going for it that help it get an advantage over this one. Like if you can't be great, at least be quick and short and sweet. And so the third one has those advantages, even if the overall kind of directing quality isn't as high as it is on this one. Like you've got the Spielberg touch here, and the third one does not have the Spielberg touch. But the third one does have some other things about it that just make it a really, really fun popcorn, blockbuster, fun summer adventure kind of movie. I think some of with this one is I know initially the third act of the movie wasn't going to be set in the city. It wasn't going to be the T-Rex roaming in the city. It was originally going to be after the big raptor scene. There was going to be, I think, a plan for the pteranodons or pterodactyls or whatever to attack the choppers as they were leaving, and so the kind of final act was going to be this sort of aerial kind of thing with the flying dinosaurs and something like that. But then that was kind of truncated and transformed into this city climax, and that's a big thing that everyone wants to see is the T-Rex in the city and kind of go into monster movie mode there. But you lose but there's a lot of characters that kind of have their arcs fulfilled, like Nick Van Owen and Roland kind of have their story finished by the time they're lifting up off the island. And then this section is just for your most primary characters. And so it feels like this other sectioned off, the same kind of structural thing that King Kong has, which is that you have the journey to the island, the bulk of it happening on the island. Then you have this sort of epilogue where sometimes you're in, at least in the Peter Jackson case, you're dropping a lot of the tertiary characters for the finale, which makes it feel a little disjointed. And then, there's the aspect of the first movie where you kind of have that they're going to the island and it's sort of whimsical and the color palette's very nice. Like Ellie's in her kind of terracotta shirt and Alan Grant's in his blue, and like the logo of the Jurassic Park Jeeps, you got red and yellows in there along with the green of the island. And this one's much more of a sort of military expedition kind of a thing. So there's just a lot of greens and browns, and everything about this movie just feels very green and brown, and it doesn't feel as kind of vivid of a palette. And it's just a huge chunk of it is just in the wild, in the woods. There's not a lot of like clear distinction, like, hey, this is the before the island, this is going to the island, this is in the facilities learning about it, this is when things start to go bad, this is on the tour, that you had with the first movie. This one, it's like you get on the island, and you're kind of like in that section of being on the island for a huge chunk of the movie, but then you have this third act in the city. So it's just kind of like the structure's kind of weird, and and so I think that kind of just hinders it a little bit.
Okay, I can understand that. Very, very well said. But I just when I guess before my
I'm
rewatch.
trying to convince anyone to dislike it. I like this movie too.
No, it's just I always wondered what, like, because clearly I've tried to rank these, like, from like my least favorite to my favorite every time a new one comes out, even when it was just like the first like three films, and it's like, okay, well, the first one, that's always going to be my favorite from these films, unless they do something crazy spectacular down the road, like it would have to be like out of this world good, and then it would still even be a discussion. But for some reason it's always the second and third one. I get like people praise like the first Jurassic Park and then the first Jurassic World as like monumentally phenomenal, and then like the two sequels afterwards that we've had, people have said like they kind of get worse, and then this one and then Fallen Kingdom are meh, and then Jurassic Park 3 and Dominion are forgettable. And it's for some reason, I don't know. I like this one. It's just a smidge under the original Jurassic Park for how much I like it, because I this is the one I grew up watching the most as a kid. So I always like to hear others' opinions and see like, okay, well, why don't you like The Lost World? Or, why is that, you like Jurassic Park 3 better than The Lost World or this one, but like why? So
Yeah.
I just look like this is like the black sheep of the family of the
Yeah, I don't
series.
yeah, I don't know if I would put 3 over it, but I would say, to kind of put my opinion relative to yours, I'd say it's maybe 2 or 3 smidges worse than the first movie, not just 1 smidge. It's like it's not like this huge fall off, but it's like there's definitely that crevice there. There's definitely that like 10% difference, and it's like that movie had everything and this one has kind of almost everything. I do like that it feels like such a true sequel to the original, in the sense that, the lysine contingency from the first movie that you don't really notice if you're not really paying attention of what they're talking about. But the the dinosaurs were designed to die after X amount of days. I think it's 7 days or 14 days, if not supplied with lysine by the, scientists and people running the park. They're lysine deficient, which is an essential thing that they need to live. And so this movie gets to have the honor of addressing, like, hey, why are they not all dead if you bred them to be that way? And it reveals that, well, there's a lot of lysine rich foods and vegetables and everything that all the dinosaurs are munching on, and then the dinosaurs are eating on each other. And it's not totally viable, because it's like, how would, if you cut off their lysine supply in 7 days, that process totally took effect. They all just started munching on the lysine foods, and then the other dinosaurs ate the dinosaurs that were munching on the lysine foods, and it like that perfect equilibrium was struck within the span of 7 days before the dinosaurs all died out from not having the lysine. It feels a little, it's a little like, would that work? Is that possible? But you can buy it, and it's at least an explanation versus no explanation. And then, uh and it's a true sequel in the sense that you at least get like Lex and Tim in for a scene, you get Hammond back. It kind of paints Hammond a little more negative than the first movie. The first movie, it feels very much like, look, he's rich and he's a showman and he's trying to do something sort of special and spectacular and grandiose, and he's just trying to, embrace the thrill and the magic and the wonder of it all. And this one, it's like, you had these other dinosaurs on this other island, and you kind of just didn't speak about it, and we're just kind of hoping it would become its own ecological thing, and people have been getting hurt, potentially killed all these years who go near the island, and you're now, because they're pushing you out of control of your company, you're trying to weasel your way in to kind of have someone photograph the natural preserve to kind of make a case for it not being exploited. And it just feels, like when Malcolm says like, oh, you went from capitalist to naturalist in only 4 years, like it kind of feels, it's a pretty solid dig on Hammond, that it's like you're not the sort of genuine showman and everything that you were before. You kind of are being like a little like, it's not sleazy, but like a little like underhanded about it. And it's like, and then he's just like giddy that Malcolm goes to the island for any reason. He's like, oh, I've got my, he counts on his hand, like he's got his 4-person team, like exactly what he wanted. It's like, yeah, no concern for like, like that's his girlfriend that's there, and he's going to try and rescue her. And now it's like there's this element of danger, and like, so I don't know. So just different kind of things like that just kind of make it not as much of that kind of fun experience that the first one was. There's none of that joy. There's none of that, like, like he says, like at first it's ooh, ah, and there's running and screaming. It's like that it's like you don't have enough of that in the movie. It's all just like, this is dangerous, this is awful, this is terrible, and so it's just the tone of the movie gets impacted by that. Rant over.
Yeah, we're not going to the park and seeing a dinosaur for the first time and getting the welcome to Jurassic Park.
Yes.
It's literally is, like Ian says, it's a rescue mission because we know that the island's dangerous, and I mean whoever gets sent there, like people are gonna get killed. There's raptors, there's T-Rexes, there could be poisonous plants, there could be anything there. Like we know that island is dangerous.
And so it's just a different vibe, and you have a lot of unlikable human characters that are kind of like jerks and douchebags, and you're just kind of rooting and waiting for them to get their comeuppance. So it's just a different kind of energy than the first one a little bit.
I understand 100%. So I'll give you some background information on the Lost World Jurassic Park before we continue on. The Lost World Jurassic Park is a 1997 American science fiction action film, and it is the second installment in the Jurassic Park franchise and the second film in the original trilogy. This being a sequel to 1993's Jurassic Park and loosely based on Michael Crichton's 1995 novel The Lost World, the film was directed by Steven Spielberg from a screenplay by David Koepp. Jeff Goldblum and Richard Attenborough reprised their roles from the original film, with Julianne Moore, Pete Postlethwaite, and Arliss Howard joining the cast. 4 years after the original film, John Hammond loses control of his company InGen to his nephew, Peter Ludlow. On the verge of bankruptcy, Ludlow intends to exploit dinosaurs from InGen's second island, Isla Sorna, with plans for a new dinosaur theme park in San Diego. John Hammond sends a team led by the eccentric chaos theorist and mathematician Ian Malcolm to the island to document the dinosaurs and encourage non-interference, although the two groups eventually come into conflict. After the original novel's release and the first film's success, fans pressured Crichton for a sequel. Following the book's publication in 1995, production began on a film sequel. Filming took place from September to December 1996, primarily in California, with a shoot in Kauai, Hawaii, where the first film was shot. The Lost World's plot and imagery is substantially darker than Jurassic Park. It makes more extensive use of CGI to depict the dinosaurs, along with life-size animatronics. The Lost World was among the most anticipated films of 1997. It was accompanied by a $250 million marketing campaign, which included video games, comic books, and toys. Released on May 23, 1997, the film received mixed reviews from critics who praised the visual effects but criticized the character development. Spielberg also expressed disappointment with the film, stating he had become increasingly disenchanted with it during production. The film became the second highest grossing film of 1997, and it earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Visual Effects, and a sequel, Jurassic Park 3, was released in 2001. So there is some background on the Lost World Jurassic Park.
Yeah, I can kind of see that maybe Spielberg, I don't like to say something like phoning it in, but even from him, it sounds like the passion kind of wasn't as high for this one. And I mean, is this the only sequel he's ever done? I think potentially maybe outside of the Indiana Jones movies. So I think I think it's maybe one of those things where the concept wasn't as novel and wasn't as fresh and unique as it was when he first approached the film, and this film, although it was advancing CGI, it wasn't as groundbreaking as the first production was, which was very much like setting a new trend. And so it's kind of just more of a lot of the same thing he's done. Well, what other scenes can we do? What other scenarios can we do? I think it speaks a lot to it that the best scene in a lot of people, like, what the best scene in a lot of people's minds in the movie is the cliffhanger scene with the RV, which has the threat of dinosaurs, but really is not a dinosaur scene at all. And in most people's opinion, that's like the standout scene in terms of how well it's directed and put together.
Well, I guess when it comes to our favorite scenes, we will have to find out what we ended up choosing a little later on.
Indeed, we will. Indeed, we will.
Well, why don't we get into a trailer on the Lost World Jurassic Park? We'll get a plot synopsis read off, and we'll come back and fire off some numbers and fun facts before we get to those favorite characters and scenes and whatnot.
Sounds good.
Mommy! Daddy! I found something!
A British family on a yacht cruise stumbled upon Site B.
Now it's only a matter of time before this lost world is found and pillaged.
Hopefully we've kept this island quarantined and contained, but I'm in shock about all this.
Isn't it great?
Ooh, that's how it always starts. But then later there's running and screaming.
The hell was that?
Go. As fast as you can.
I need you to send rescue immediately.
Taking dinosaurs off this island is the worst idea in history of bad ideas.
Let's get this movable feast underway. Don't move!
What is it?
Mommy's very angry.
Four years after the events on Isla Nublar, a British family anchors their yacht off a beach on Isla Sorna and comes ashore, unaware of the genetically engineered dinosaurs on the island. Their daughter, Kathy Bowman, wanders off and is attacked by a group of compies. Peter Ludlow, nephew of Dr. John Hammond, uses the incident to oust Hammond and gain control of InGen. The company's second facility, Site B on Isla Sorna, was where the dinosaurs were cloned, but the island was abandoned during a hurricane several years earlier. Ludlow plans to exploit Isla Sorna's dinosaurs to save InGen, prompting Hammond to request Dr. Ian Malcolm's help in documenting the creatures to promote a non-interference policy. Ian's girlfriend, paleontologist Dr. Sarah Harding, is already on Isla Sorna, leading Ian to reluctantly agree to go, but only to retrieve her. Ian travels to Isla Sorna with equipment specialist and engineer Eddie Carr and video documentarian and activist Nick Van Owen. They find Sarah and discover that Ian's daughter Kelly has stowed away in their research trailer. Ludlow and a mercenary team arrive on the island to capture dinosaurs, with help from big game hunters Roland Tembo and Aja Sidhu. Ian's group realizes that Ludlow intends to ship the creature specimens to San Diego for a new Jurassic Park, using a nearly finished amphitheater that Hammond abandoned in favor of the Isla Nublar site. Nick and Sarah free the captured dinosaurs, and the animals wreak havoc on the InGen team's camp. On the way back to the trailer, Nick rescues an injured Tyrannosaurus Rex infant that Roland used as bait to hunt its parent. Knowing this will bring the baby's parents to them, Ian takes Kelly to safety and returns to the trailer to warn Sarah and Nick. They successfully treat the infant, but the Tyrannosaurus parents arrive, having tracked the infant's scent. They reclaim their infant and destroy the trailer by overturning and pushing it partially over the cliff. Eddie arrives and attempts to pull the trailer back up, but both Tyrannosaurs return and start tearing Eddie's SUV apart before they devour him. Ian, Sarah, and Nick are rescued by Ludlow's team and forced to work together since both groups lost all their communication equipment in separate attacks. They decide to travel to an abandoned InGen base to call for help. After the team sets up a camp, they are ambushed by the Tyrannosaurus adult. The party flees into a field of long grass where a pack of velociraptors ambush them, killing Aja and most of the team. Ian's group reaches the InGen base, fights off the velociraptors, and successfully radios for helicopter extraction. Nick reveals that he stole Roland's bullets to prevent him from killing his trophy. However, Roland has sedated the male Tyrannosaurus with tranquilizers. As InGen personnel arrive to secure the male and infant, Roland declines Ludlow's job offer at the San Diego park, reflecting on Aja's death and the morality of Ludlow's scheme. At the port of San Diego, Ian and Sarah attempt to convince Ludlow to abandon his plans, but the ship carrying the male Tyrannosaurus suddenly crashes into the docks. The crew is found dead all over, and the adult is accidentally released and rampages throughout the city. Ian and Sarah locate the infant at the planned park and use it to lure the adult back to the docks. Ludlow tries to retrieve the infant but is killed by the dinosaurs. Sarah uses a tranquilizer gun to sedate the male before government forces can use lethal force on it, and Ian seals the cargo hold doors on the ship. In the aftermath, the dinosaurs are shipped back to Isla Sorna, accompanied by the U.S. Navy. Ian, Sarah, and Kelly watch Hammond in a television interview announcing that the American and Costa Rican governments have declared the island a natural reserve. All right, how about we hop on over to some numbers here? The Lost World Jurassic Park had a budget of $73 million with a worldwide box office return of $618.6 million. So Chris has our inflation numbers for those.
Yeah, that $73 million budget would be roughly the equivalent of about 146 million in 2025 dollars, 145.9, give or take. And so about the equivalent of a 150 million budget movie today, which is actually still quite low by today's standards, considering many movies are 250 to 300. And then the box office gross of 600 million is almost just like the budget, almost perfectly doubled, would be 1.2 billion in 2025 dollars, which is a far way off from the 2.2 to 2.4-ish billion, depending on the re-releases being included for the original Jurassic Park, but still a very impressive total if it were to pull in that. I mean, I know we're shortly away from the release of Jurassic World Rebirth, and Universal Studios will be over the moon if that movie makes 1.2 billion at the box office.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure we will find out the budget once we get to that episode and start doing some digging, but I have not looked at that, but if you can, to any standard today, if you can gross over $1 billion, even on like $250 million budget or a $300 million budget, companies seem to be pretty happy with that kind of return.
Yeah, I don't think there's any version of reality, like, unless a movie like Avengers Endgame or an Avatar only made just $1 billion. Pretty much any movie that makes $1 billion or more is well into the green.
Yeah, 100%. But this film is rated a 6.6 out of 10 on IMDb, a 54% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, 59% rating on Metacritic, and then 84% of Google users liked this film.
I think the truth is somewhere in the average. I think it's more in like the high C, low B. If the first movie's an A,
Yeah, our 84% for our Google users, that might be about right.
Yeah. Like, I'm saying high C, like that's probably me being a little too harsh. It's probably more. It's a solid. If the first one's an A, this is a solid B.
Well, high C, say 78% to 82, 84, somewhere around there. I couldn't disagree with you on that one.
Yeah, mid 80s,
And then my last number for you here is there are 15 human deaths in this film, averaging to one death just over every 8.5 minutes.
Yeah, when they have a big ensemble of characters like they do in this one, unlike the first one, it gives you a lot of cannon fodder to kind of just have a lot of people that can just get a lot of interesting dinosaur deaths, and so that's a fun thing about this one. Although so many characters kind of they say the critics were kind of critical of some of the character development. A lot of the characters feel a little thin. Some of them feel like they're basically there to have like one scene with one purpose, and then they're there to remember them when they get killed. So it's I can understand that criticism.
Well, and then like to add on to that, it seems like a lot of them are just there to not to like say it so bluntly, to like just be dicks and like for you to root for them to be killed.
Yeah, exactly.
I know we don't have like a favorite death category or anything, but I did want to mention one thing about the guy who what is his name? His Dieter, I think as they call him,
Yeah,
and
Dieter,
he
yeah.
gets killed by the compies. It's like you're telling me that as a grown man like you and I, we don't think that we could fight them off and survive.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you're caught, I mean, it'd be one thing like if I'm in my house and like a bunch of those just busted in and I have no context for it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, but like these guys did go in theory being prepared for what they were gonna see. And I mean, and I'm sure like it's not like being bitten by ants. Like they have teeth and they seem to be meat eaters. So they're probably like ripping chunks of them off of him, and kind of like, it's again, I like to think that I'd be able to at least like get away or to safety before they did me in bad enough to kill me, to like completely like unless they immediately took out my Achilles tendon, like I like to think that it's not just like, oh, there's five of them on me and I'm just on the floor and I'm done, like, I again not but like it's a great death. It's a good death to kind of be swarmed, but it's always like, dude, like, I don't know, like, you know, I don't know. It's a little maybe it strains, believability a little bit. I don't know.
Well, I just asked because every time I watch this movie, I look at that scene and I see like where he's like trying to like grab the compies off of him, and I'm like, every time you do that, I'm breaking a neck or
Yeah,
something.
you
Like
think like you'd be
just throwing them
stunned.
off of me. Like
Yeah,
I
you'd be
am
like,
not gonna let these little 1 foot tall things get the best of me.
yeah, I don't know if it would be like, I mean, I don't know how difficult it would be. Like their necks are kind of long, so like I don't know if like is it like a snake where like you can't like I don't know, like can you break a snake's neck? Like is it very easy to do that to a snake? Because snakes are they're so uh they're so dexterous in terms of that. And so like so maybe it's like a hard thing to do, like you can't just like step on a snake's neck and just like it be done really. Like it's a harder thing to do. And so like you wonder like how difficult it is, but at the same time, like you have to think that if you're getting violent enough with those things that they wouldn't just like that wouldn't have a lot of perseverance. A lot of animals, like you would think they would like start to flee a little bit, or something like that. Like if you like grab one off you and like chuck it into the air and like it's probably going like 10 feet, like I don't know. It's hard to again, I'm not trying to be like, oh man, what a wimp. He couldn't have done it. Like those things are chomping on him. But I don't know. Maybe he had a way that he could have like at least like survived long enough to get back to where someone could have heard him or seen him or something. I don't know.
I just wanted to bring that up because I feel like, with your adrenaline going and being able to like I get that they have teeth, they're biting and gnawing at you. So like, but he's able to pull them away, like slam them damn things to the ground, like
Yeah.
once you kill one or two of them, you figure, some of them might be like, all right, like we're out of here. Like we're not ready for this, or we're not here for this. Like something has to give. And I feel like I'm not going to be what gives. I'm going to get out of that situation alive.
Yeah, and it's not like he was like in his swimming trunks at the beach. Like he was kind of geared up, like his feet and legs it seemed like they'd probably be pretty good. He's in like probably more than one layer of clothes. Like I don't know, you know, maybe that was a little forced.
just just wanted to bring that up. But that is all I have for you on numbers. Sorry for going on a little rant there, but why don't I throw some fun facts at you for this film?
Let's do it.
My first one here for you is the two models of the T-Rexes each weighed 9 tons, and due to their weight, the crew constructed sets around them rather than moving them onto the sets themselves.
Wow. I mean, that's an elegant solution.
Though I mean, those things are huge and fantastic yet again. And I mean,
Yeah,
Stan Winston comes through once again.
it's peak performance every step of the way.
Absolutely. My next one for you here is initially Steven Spielberg wanted to save the San Diego sequence for a third film. However, he later decided to include it in this movie after realizing that he would probably not direct another installment in the franchise.
Yeah, that seems to make sense. It's crazy to think that they were ever intentionally saving things for future movies, but from what I understand, that was kind of a habit with the Jurassic Park movies, which is if they had a sequence or an idea that was thought up for one movie and they couldn't fit it in, it was often just kind of put into the next one or put off to the next one. Because from what I understand, over the many permutations of Jurassic Park 3, it ended up just basically kind of being a bit of a hodgepodge of like different sequences and ideas that were kind of thought up for other movies.
And I mean, I won't spoil anything of my thoughts or anything on that film, but I will leave it to there. I will leave it to that episode.
Yep, indeed. We'll have some more to talk about next week.
This is fun. This of course goes back to you and me since we're big King Kong fans. And at around an hour and 45 minutes into the film, the T-Rex can be seen scratching its head in a direct homage to the stop-motion T-Rex scratching its head in the 1933 King Kong, one of Steven Spielberg's favorite movies growing up.
Always great to have a reference like that in a movie like this.
Absolutely. I didn't catch it the first time, so after I found that fun fact, I had to go back and check it out.
Yeah, and you have, of course, the gentleman of an Asian persuasion running from the T-Rex in the streets of the city, to kind of give a bit of an aesthetic nod to Godzilla.
That's I think about that every time that scene comes across the TV.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
In the early drafts of this script, Ariana Richard and Joseph Mazzello, who played Lex and Tim, were kept in for much longer of the film. Some even had the kids going back to the park and encountering the dinosaurs again with the crew.
That I mean, it would have always a scenario where they could have been in the movie more would have always been good, but it would have strained a little bit of credibility to kind of conjure up another reason for them to go back and be put in danger again. At least with Ian Malcolm's daughter and Sarah Harding, it's kind of like, well, they've never been and everyone wants that first opportunity to see dinosaurs, and then when it goes wrong, you never want to go back. It would have been kind of hard to believe Lex, maybe she's a little older, so like they could have maybe played up the like after the first movie, she got like all into it and like, prepared and is like now like an out, like an expeditioner kind of a personality type. She wants to be an adventurer. Like they could have played that up with her. Hard to kind of sell that like Tim goes from like what, like 7, 8, 9 to like 12, 13, 14, to that he would be like that he would be into that, so that one's a little bit of a harder sell.
And it's a thought of like does it feel forced? Like in the certain way that you do it, do we like the fans and like people who go see the movie? Do they feel like you're forcing those characters like down our throats just to have them in the movie?
And while we're on the note of the characters, I kind of wanted to get a little bit of an info kind of thought dump here, which is interesting. Which I did like that while you get Hammond back and Lex and Tim back for a scene, and now Ian Malcolm going from a supporting character elevated to the main character. I think that that's a really cool thing that it feels like an evolving story, and it doesn't just feel like they conjured up a reason to put Grant, Ellie, and Malcolm back on the island again with the three of them. It feels interesting that like those characters kind of moved out of the story. Not every major story and event about dinosaurs in this world would necessarily have to revolve around the same people. That would be a little unrealistic. So it kind of adds up that like, hey, like Malcolm goes back for his own reasons on another occasion, but Grant and Ellie are kind of out of they're kind of out of the story for this one. Hammond's in a minor role. The kids are barely in it. And then like, like I actually kind of like that. I like that it's kind of like an evolution of it, a change of it, that it's like more of a continuation of, it feels more of a continuation of the story instead of just a repeat of the same thing over again.
I agree with you. I like that, Ian has to go back because he has to, in his own words, kind of save his girlfriend when she doesn't need his saving, and like his daughter kind of sneaks onto the island with him because she's like, well, you told me not to listen to you, so I
Yeah.
I think that's funny. And then we get Eddie tagging along, and like just the whole group that they put together. It's a different aspect, and we're getting introduced to new characters that don't feel forced, and like they're getting sent to this island for a reason.
Yeah, and I want to say that fun little piece of trivia that I'm not sure is really evident in the movies or really played up in the movies, but in terms of the book lore and continuity, Sarah Harding is the daughter of Dr. Harding from the first film, who is more prominent in the book, but in the first film is the doctor who's helping out with the Triceratops in that scene. So there's nothing in the movies that contradicts that connection. That's still Dr. Harding, and she is Sarah Harding. She is his daughter, but they don't really, it's not really a connection that's kind of referenced or played up in the movie.
I did not know that connection. I haven't read the book.
Yeah, the more you know. And I'll just say, like, he mentions he has 3 kids in the first movie, so I think it's fun that, like, we only see one of Ian Malcolm's daughters in this movie, and they just, like, and it's this interesting thing where they, like, there's the one joke where it's like, "Do you see a family resemblance here?" Like, it's like, they kinda, like, play up the fact that, like, Jeff Goldblum has an African American daughter, and, like, as a kid, I was like, "So did he adopt her, or is she biracial?" Like, as a kid, you don't really kind of wrap your head around it well enough, so I just didn't get it. So that's kind of fun. I
It,
don't love her character. I it's not it, I okay, here's the thing. Almost all of her character I actually think is just fine. She has what I think is the, like, dumbest moment in the movie, which is when she does gymnastics and taunts the raptor and then kicks the raptor and kills it. I just think that is just so, like, when Spielberg say he was becoming, like, disillusioned with the movie while making it, it's like, I have to imagine it's during, like, nonsense scenes like that. I'm like, we're having the teenage gym girl, like, kick and kill the raptor, like, and, like, do a little performance before on the bar. It's like, okay, like, I'm rolling my eyes, I'm sorry.
the school cut you from the team? No.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, that's a nice punchline and all, but it's like, you're just doing, like, some nonsense movie stuff right now, like, did you ever, you watch the first Jurassic Park and it's like nobody's kicking these things off balance and spiking them onto pipes and things like that. That raptor sequence in the movie is very good, but it's also like, maybe it's not that hard to survive an attack from a raptor if you can just kind of do all these, like, Three Stooges shenanigans with them of jumping through doors and under walls and over rafters and things like that. It's like, okay, it's like, is it really really hard to survive a raptor, or is it kind of weirdly easy?
I think that's one of those scenes that was definitely targeted more towards the younger audience for
And
sure.
I think they indulge in it a bit too much, like all the surviving a raptor attack shenanigans. And so it's just kind of like, again, it's a little eye rolling.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that one. In this film, I'll get on to another one. There is roughly 50% more dinosaur action than in the original Jurassic Park.
Yeah, and it doesn't, I mean, I believe that, but it's just kind of done in a way that's kind of like not as awe-inspiring
Not
or
a standout.
not as engaging. Yeah, you think about the T-Rex scene, you think about the raptor kitchen scene, you just, it's like, whereas here it's like, oh, we got a bunch of dinosaurs out in the field, we're wrangling them up. It's like, it just feels like it's not like super high stakes. It's not super engaging. The raptor in the compound scene doesn't have anything on the kitchen scene. The the T-Rex attack in this one on the RVs over the cliff just doesn't hit the same as the T-Rex attack in the first movie.
Next one for you here. Here's another movie connection. The SS Venture, which transports the Tyrannosaurus to San Diego, is also a reference to King Kong from 1933, who was transported to New York City on a ship called the SS Venture. This is the franchise's second reference to the classic movie. The gate in the first movie was modeled on the Skull Island gate, with Dr. Ian Malcolm pointing this out.
Yeah, and as a kid that the you know, because in the pre-internet age, when you notice things like this, you kinda just notice, you're like, "Huh, what?" I'm like, "Oh, the SS Venture, like, that's the thing? Like, that's the same thing," when you're not really looking for, realizing on the internet that movies do these kind of references and connections all the time. It's just like, "Oh, that's interesting, that's fun." So it's always like discovering those things is always fun. I always just thought, I was like, "Is that a big coincidence or is it on purpose?" It's like, clearly it's on purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. As a kid, I always wondered the same things, and even I was always excited to make connections to other films like that as a kid, and I think even more so as an adult when I find these things out.
Oh yeah, I always love to be able to kind of pretend that some movies are that movies that aren't really meant to be connected can somehow be connected. I love that. One of them is the character of Trent in the Transformers 2007 film being reprised by the same actor a few years later in the Friday the 13th reboot. The same actor playing a douchebag named Trent. He was in high school in that movie, then he's in college in the next movie. And like, for me, I'm like, those movies are forever connected because of that. I don't care what anyone says, it's legitimate.
Absolutely. And I like that you brought up that connection as well. It's a 2-year difference between films, so it's definitely possible. You could have been a senior in high school and then, off to college.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, and in universe, maybe it's more like closer to like 3 years, is.
Yeah, who knows? The sounds made by the baby stegosaurus in this film were taken from the sounds of a rhinoceros.
Oh, very nice. Nice. You do imagine that a lot of these are kind of hodgepodge manipulations of some kind of real animal sound.
Oh, yeah. Composer John Williams modified the original Jurassic Park themes for this movie to include homages to Max Steiner's score from King Kong. So, another connection.
Yeah, very interesting. They really played up, and I mean, structurally, the film is very much like King Kong in terms of going to the island, finding a creature, bringing it back to the city. It gets loose. Like it's a quote unquote remake of the Lost World, but very much King Kong in that way as well.
They keep having I love it. I love that they keep having connections. I mean, we'll get to talking about the score of this film, but I like the score of all these films, so we'll dig into that here in a little bit as well.
Indeed.
Weeks before filming began, Steven Spielberg decided to change the ending to have the T-Rex rampage through San Diego, saying, "We've got to do it. It's too fun not to." He was interested in seeing dinosaurs attacking the mainland, and he believed that audiences would enjoy the San Diego rampage. Initially, Spielberg wanted such a scene to be saved for a third film, but later decided to add it to the second one when he realized he would probably not direct another film in the series. And the sequence is similar to an attack scene involving a brontosaurus in London in The Lost World from 1925.
Very nice. Yeah, that makes sense, and that kind of just shows, that, they say he was kind of disillusioned a little bit as it went on. Like that shows like even in the pre-production, as he was getting close to filming, he's doing the whole like, man, like this isn't really maybe hitting for me the way I want it to. Well, hey, let's jazz it up a little bit. Let's put this really awesome, fun sequence in the movie that I really want to do to kind of like drive up his sort of intrigue and passion for the film a little bit. You can kind of just see it there. It's like Spielberg certainly wasn't really feeling it on this one.
No, and I mean for him not wanting to come back and for the film that we got, I mean,
It's still
eh,
very good.
yeah, it's still very good. But I mean, if he wanted to come back, I would have loved to see like if he was 100% like after the first film, like, yeah, we're doing this. It's gonna be like bigger and better, like type attitude. Like I would have loved to have seen what they could have came up with.
And I like one thing I'll talk about a little bit. I like that it is called. I used to hate that it was, but I like now that it is called The Lost World Jurassic Park, whether or not it has Jurassic Park in it or not. But I like that it's called that as opposed to just Jurassic Park 2. We will talk about naming conventions as this franchise continues. But for the purposes of this, I like the idea of like you have Jurassic Park and then you have The Lost World Jurassic Park. Like I feel like that could have been something that worked, and then we'll talk about other things at other times.
All right, well, I got 5 more for you here. I thought this one was super interesting when I found this. Um, the map for Los Cinco Muertos, aka the 5 deaths, are Island Matanceros, which means from the Spanish word matanza, which means slaughter, so Slaughter Island. Isla Muerta means dead island. Isla Tucano means stingy island, and Isla Pena means sorrow island.
Very interesting.
My next one for you here is the producers had proposed actress Mila Kunis for Kelly's character, the daughter of Ian Malcolm, but Spielberg had already chosen Vanessa Lee Chester from the beginning after seeing her performance as Becky in the film A Little Princess.
I will just say that I think Mila Kunis would have been a better choice.
I could hear the sadness in your voice.
Like, like Mila Kunis, and like you see her on that '70s show. It's like, yeah, it's like that totally would have, because this is probably just a couple years before that. I don't remember exactly when that '70s show started airing, but it's like, man, like, yeah, that would have been like really, really good. That would not have made the gymnastics thing any less dumb. But I just mean like overall, like Mila Kunis has like when she was playing in like that teenager kind of difficult teen kind of a angle, like she does it really, really well. And she probably would have done a really, really solid job on this. And probably someone like Natalie Portman would have been like potentially in the running as well and in that age range as well. Like she probably could have been a really good choice, like there were choices out there, it's not a bad performance in the movie. It just doesn't, it just, I don't know.
I'm not sure how old Kirsten Dunst was. I mean, I don't think she was quite teenager age yet by
Yeah,
19.
you're trying to think of the people that were like late teens, early 20s in the new millennium and who would have been like teens when this was filming in 95, 96 or whatever. So, but yeah, I mean, something like that, something that maybe didn't make people have to be like, "How is she Jeff Goldblum's daughter?" the first time they see her, like, and with no explanation. Like, I'm not I'm not knocking it, but it's like, a reference, anything. Like, it's like, it's like you almost did it to kind of make people say, "What's going on here?" I don't know. I don't know. It's like you did something to make not of a big deal out of it to try and like make it feel weird if someone asks. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
All right, I got 3 more for you here, and the sounds of the Pachycephalosaurus consisted of several vocalizations, with some sounding much more aggressive or ominously threatening. The vocals are portrayed as raspy or blunt, consisting of squawks or bleats from both vultures, sheep, goats, and moans from a camel and rhino.
Very nice. It's always kind of fun to hear a little bit of the like, this is like these 5 different things, like it's always fun to hear about that.
All mixed into one sound for one dinosaur.
Mhm.
I don't know how you'll feel about this one, since we always there's always casting what ifs that we talk about, but Julia Roberts was considered for the role of Sarah Harding.
No. No. I like Julianne Moore in this movie. Yeah. I'm not saying that there's not necessarily folks, that there couldn't have been maybe someone I would have preferred to see. I'm not like, "Oh my gosh, Julianne Moore is just, like, absolutely amazing and perfect," but, like, definitely over Julia Roberts. Definitely over Julia Roberts.
I think Julia Roberts is just like, she was big at the time. She was a very
Yeah.
familiar face, so
To Julia Roberts,
right.
like that, that's all, it would have been like casting like another version of casting Arnold in the first Jurassic Park. Like, really? You're gonna put Arnold in the big dinosaur movie? Like, you're gonna put him on the poster with his muscles, Jurassic Park, like like I don't know, like oh, because it would have just become, oh, Jurassic Park 2 has Julia Roberts in it. That's what it would have been. And it's like, no, that's dumb.
All right, my last one for you here is The Lost World Jurassic Park surpassed Terminator 2 Judgment Day as the highest grossing sequel worldwide and held the record until it was surpassed by Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones in 2002.
Very nice. Yeah, I guess technically they wouldn't count the Phantom Menace surpassing some of the other Star Wars movies or this movie as a sequel doing it. That's technically a prequel. So Episode 2 being a sequel to this. Yeah, okay, that's fun. That's interesting. Yeah. T2 was right up there. And yeah, people say like, oh, it made 600 million. The first one made 900 million when it first came out. But this was still like, I think in 97, you would have had, and this is summer 97 before Titanic came out. So I think you would have had Jurassic Park as the number one movie, maybe E.T. or Independence Day as like 2 and 3, somewhere in there. And then The Lion King perhaps is number 4, and then I think that this movie would have been somewhere in, like, the top 5 of worldwide movies all time, maybe top 10, maybe I'm overlooking a film or 2, this is purely off memory, but, like, there definitely was a point where this was not like, oh, some sequel that didn't make nearly as much, like, this was still, like, one of the all-time performers when it came out.
Clearly why they made a third and a fourth and a fifth. Like, this
Yeah, they're
this
never
franchise just keeps on going.
never gonna stop.
Well, that is all I have for you on the fun facts section for The Lost World. If you don't have anything, do you care to dive into your favorite character of this second film?
Absolutely. My favorite character in this film was actually not one of the primary characters as much as we all like Ian Malcolm. It was actually Roland Tembo, played by Pete Postlethwaite, who, the great hunter who's trying to hunt the T-Rex and he's leading the expedition. I just thought he was always a cool dude. He's not necessarily he's a harsh guy, but he's not a villain per se. He's kind of got his sort of code of conduct and code of honor and things of that nature. And he's a no nonsense, but he's just there to kind of like do his job and do his job well and hunt a T-Rex and kind of like perfect the height of his craft as a huntsman. And I've always just really thought his character was cool, and I miss him when we leave the island.
He is a great character, and I mean, like you said, he's not really a villain. He's just he's trying to hunt, as he says, the greatest beast, that has ever lived.
Yeah, and I feel, not to ramble here, but I feel like maybe there's a version of this movie where instead of the two teams going to the island separately and meeting on the island, maybe there's a version of this movie where circumstances occur that force them to go together, that force the smaller team to be piggybacked along with the larger team, and maybe their uh, secondary mission from Hammond is a bit more covert and not obvious, not clear. Maybe it's being kept from the larger team. So maybe you have these kind of groups unified more off the bat and kind of going as a unit, but just with divisions amongst the unit, and maybe there's more room for the intermingling and stuff instead of it being like there's two teams and we're secret, then we're discovered, and then there's animosity. Like maybe kind of making it one big team at the outset with our main characters having a bit of a hidden motive would have created something a bit more efficient, a bit more, a bit more, workable. Who knows?
I like that. I see where you're going here. I definitely like that. He was a fun character. I liked the character of Eddie in this film. I liked Nick Van Owen.
It's good. Vince Vaughn before his comedy days, really, like before doing comedies all the time.
Yeah, I like Vince Vaughn in pretty much everything I've seen him in. Eddie Carr, I can't remember the actual name of the actor, but he's in one of the shows I watch all the time, The Good Doctor, and I've seen him in a couple other things. But I went with a bland choice again. I went with the basic, and I chose Ian Malcolm for this film, just because he's survived and lived through the first film, and then he comes back to Hammond's house and he's like, "Well, your grandfather wanted to talk to me. Do you have any idea what it's about?" So he has no idea what's going on. He's probably thinking that he's going to get pulled into something that he doesn't want to be in. And he finds out his girlfriend has gone to the island, so he goes to the island, and now he's stuck dealing with dinosaurs again, and now he's got to deal with everything else that InGen is sending to the island. And I like him with like the girlfriend and daughter, and have like the different aspect that they give him in this film. So that's mainly the reason why I chose him as my favorite character. Is he gets to be our main guy, and he gets a little bit different of an arc in this film.
Yeah, he gets to have a different kind of journey, a different kind of placement in the movie. And I would have loved a version of this where maybe Nick Van Owen and and Roland were maybe more prominent and more kind of just more mixing it in with Ian Malcolm a little bit and like having that kind of group dynamic. The way you had the trio and the bouncing off of Alan Grant and Ian Malcolm in the first movie, like it would have been kind of neat to see more opportunities for like the Roland, Nick Van Owen, Ian Malcolm kind of dynamic to kind of play out with character work. That would have been fun.
Yeah, I mean, this film doesn't have bad characters whatsoever in the film. I mean, they're entertaining and there's some good lines of dialogue that we'll get to. There's some good scenes. But I mean, I Ian Malcolm, I mean, Jeff Goldblum and anything he's in, I love seeing him in. So
Yeah, and it was prudent decision making on Spielberg's part that Independence Day came out co-starring Jeff Goldblum and became almost the biggest hit of all time, second only to Jurassic Park. So, you know, Spielberg would have been idiotic to not capitalize because in the original book of Jurassic Park, Ian Malcolm dies, or is it's pretty much 99.99% implied, confirmed that he's dead. It's the assumption of everyone else that he's dead. And then in the sequel, they reveal how he barely survived. And so, he gets to survive the first movie, and then very prudent of Spielberg to kind of say, like, hey, Jeff Goldblum is riding a high off of Independence Day. Like, we're going to roll him into the protagonist of this movie and kind of put him front and center. Like, very wise decision making as far as that goes.
All right, so what was your favorite score from the film then?
Maybe not a very exciting or dramatic or off the wall choice, but it's a track called "To the Island," and it's just sort of like the new island theme for this film. And some people kind of think of it as like the T-Rex theme, or something like that. But I really like that track, and it's just, it's nowhere near as sort of awe-inspiring or exciting as any of the sort of main themes from the first film, but it is nostalgic and engaging, and captures that spirit of adventure in a really nice way. And it is one of those tracks where it could feel right at home in like a King Kong movie.
I ended up choosing uh I went with a soundtrack called Visitor in San Diego, and it's like it's another one of those kind of like the first film had. It's like a 7-minute suite of the where the boat's coming up to the dock or the ship is coming up to the dock and the T-Rex escapes and the T-Rex is just rampaging through San Diego. And there it's not a whole lot of like, I mean, it's not loud or like rambunctious music or anything like that, but it fits the scene pretty well. And I it's not something I really paid attention to as a young guy or as a younger kid, but it's just very well put to the scene when the with the T-Rex running through the city. So I liked that one.
It's a pretty sweet is what you're saying.
Exactly.
I could not resist.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and I'll take that with a laugh, and I'll give you some of my favorite quotes. So I got 3, and then I had that like our little honorable mentions, and then I have a favorite. So I'll give one, and then I'll shoot to you.
Okay, sure.
So we mentioned one, so I'll mention this one quick. So I'll kind of give you 2 first, but you mentioned oh yeah, ooh, that's how it always starts. Then later there's running and screaming. That was one of the ones from Ian Malcolm I chose. And then
Likewise. And
There-
the way he delivers that line is embedded in my brain. The way he finishes the later there's running and screaming, and just the way he finishes off saying the word screaming is just, I don't know, it's in my brain forever.
My second one that I wanted to this one gave me a laugh. He goes, "Why don't people listen to me? I use plain and simple English. I don't have any accent that I'm aware of."
That was another honorable mention I had, and dude, I can't tell you in all of my years of working at this job or that job or managing this group of people or that group of people, that line doesn't live rent free in my head. I use plain English. I don't have any accent that I'm aware of.
I have a feel I might have one of the ones that you might mention, and there's only one reason that we would mention it, but I'll let you go ahead.
Okay, so maybe not, maybe not. So I've got the line that I will go with as my favorite because you use the other ones that I want to mention. I'm in agreement with that. Is a line from Roland where he says, "Remember that chap about 20 years ago? I forgot his name. Climbed Everest without any oxygen. Came down nearly dead. When they asked him, they said, 'Why did you go up there to die?' He said, 'I didn't. I went up there to live.'" And I just love that line, and it's from a character that I really like in the movie, and, it's his explanation of why he's wanting to hunt the Rex, and, it's like, that's just a cool dude right there. That's just a cool camper.
Absolutely. I thought about using that one, and I went with a couple that were more comedic, like the why don't people listen to me and the ooh ah.
Yeah, you
So
can't go wrong with that. A lot of stuff that comes out of Jeff Goldblum's mouth in this movie is gold.
well, this one came from his daughter, and I immediately thought of you, where they're talking about the lady she's gonna go with, and she's like, she doesn't even have Sega. She's such a troglodyte.
Yes, I can confirm that. I could probably tell you that this movie is probably the origin for where I know that word from first. I can almost certainly promise you that that I'm not tuning my own horn or anything, but I was a fairly sharp kid growing up. I was kind of put into to some gifted courses as a kid. It's not done me any good in life. I'm just a normal guy, but I learning what things were through context, like the whole like context clues that they try to teach you when you're young, of like you can figure out what something means just by how it's said or what context it's said in. So that cued me into like what troglodyte means. Like a lady who doesn't have Sega is a troglodyte. So it's like someone that's like not with the times, not good with technology, kind of backwards, kind of like a caveman, like that kind of a thing. So like, yeah, this was probably the movie that I discovered the word troglodyte from.
I just thought it was funny because
Yeah, I'm surprised I didn't remember that to mention that either.
you had to explain to me troglodyte because I hadn't heard the word or didn't remember it. So
Yeah.
that I instantly thought of you for that one.
Yeah, there was another line that the great line of, it's a double whammy because earlier they're yelling out for Sarah when they're on the island, and he goes, "Sarah Harding," and he goes, "How many Sarahs do you think are on this island, Nick?" And then later on, he's looking for Nick, and he's like, "Nick Van Owen." So I'm
I'm
like, that's like,
thinking
I love great callbacks and setups and payoffs like that. Like, that's just good old school, classic filmmaking.
I had one that I liked just for the delivery, and it was a small back and forth between Eddie and Ian, and it was he said the most powerful neurotoxin in the world. It works faster than the nerve conducting velocity, which means the animal's down before it actually feels the prick of the dart. And Dr. Ian Malcolm goes, "Is there an antidote?" And Eddie goes, "What? Like if you shot yourself in the foot? Don't do that. You'd be dead before you even knew you had an accident."
Yeah, that's a great bit of dialogue. You'd be dead before you even knew you had an accident. That's fantastic.
My favorite one from the film, which of course I always mention 10 before I give it, is again from Ian Malcolm. And it's when Roland says the Rex just fed, so like he won't be bothering us anymore. And Ian goes, "I believe you're talking about Eddie. How about you show some respect? The man saved our life by giving his." And that one kind of hits you in the feels because every time Eddie dies in this movie, it pisses me off. I think it's a useless death. I didn't want him to die. So that when the Rexes kill him, it kind of irritates me every time I watch this movie.
Yeah, he's one of the, people want to throw their arms in the air over a certain supporting character's death in a certain sequel in this franchise and be like, it was too mean, it wasn't deserved, it was senselessly over the top. It's like poor Eddie tried his, was just a nice guy throughout and tried his damnedest to rescue them from going over the cliff's edge and did rescue them. And all he gets for his trouble is he gets ripped in half by a pair of T-Rexes, like where has this franchise ever had any justice for anybody? It's not just only bad people get eaten by dinosaurs.
Exactly, and like you said, he's just a nice guy. He's trying to do everything for everyone. He comes in and you think he saved the day or is trying to, and I just feel like as a viewer, like, all right, well, like he's not going to be able to save these guys. Something's going to happen, whether it's a T-Rex or a raptor attack or something. Like he's gonna be able to save them, and he's gonna go over while being in his car with the big RV, something. And it's just a crappy way to go for him being such a nice character.
Yeah, which speaking of that, I'll move us over to favorite scenes here in the movie. And that cliffhanging scene is absolutely hands down my favorite scene of the whole movie. The tension of the glass cracking drove me up a wall as a kid and still keeps you on edge watching it now many years later.
Absolutely, that was one of the ones I chose. Like just them hanging over, or are you speaking of like the whole attack on it?
Well, yeah, if I could cheat, I would say the whole sequence, but the standout moment is when she falls and she's on the glass and the glass is cracking and then they're trying to get to her before it breaks. That's the peak of that sequence. It's kind of like the climax there, and then it all falls around him, but like it's just like that's Spielberg at his finest in this movie. You can tell that sequence like jumped out at him and like sort of lit the fire under him in a way that maybe some other parts of this movie didn't.
Yeah, you see what is it? The satellite phone that's kind of like slowly making its way down and getting ready to fall.
Mhm.
There's definitely a lot of tension there, and then having to deal with, flipping back and forth between Eddie trying to save him and he's trying to tie the rope, and the rope keeps slipping and it doesn't hold, so he has to get in the car and put that bad boy in reverse and just go as hard as he can. And it is a very entertaining, I mean, fun scene. And one of the other ones that I liked, it's a very quick one, is when the guy's yelling, "Don't go in the long grass," and you can see the raptors like just like slowly moving through the grass, like circling them, and they all end up getting attacked. I thought that was a very well done sequence.
Yeah, it's the kind of scene that you could kind of like in another sort of setting in another type of movie with different creatures and characters. It's like you could imagine the same thing in like a cornfield, like the everything's so high you can't see, and there's something just making its way through to get you. It's very, very effectively done. Uh While we're on this note of scenes, I want to point out one of the moments that's like one of the most weirdly unintentionally funny moments to me when the Rexes are coming and they're about to exit out of the vehicle. You know, Nick Van Owen goes to the door and then Jeff Goldblum goes behind him at the door and he's kind of positioned awkwardly behind him and like they're both trying to open the door, but like it looks like Goldblum's like, giving him the business from behind a little bit. And then and they have this line, where Goldblum's like straight into the woods. And then he goes to kick the door. And if you pay attention, I'm pretty sure he stomps the shit out of Vince Vaughn's hand that's up there on the wall on the door when Jeff Goldblum goes to kick the door. So he's just like, it's this weird thing where it's like looks like visually like he's thrusting behind him and then is like straight to the woods and then stomps the heck out of his hand. And I don't know. It's one of those weird moments where you don't notice it because it's in the sequence. But when you just watch that little bit, it's like that is the funniest, goofiest thing ever.
And if he didn't stomp his hand, he came pretty damn
Yes,
close
yeah,
to it.
yeah, exactly. It's like we did. It's one of those things where we were watching the movie once and we were all like, "Did that just happen? Like, what's going on?" Like, not the most effectively blocked scene from Mr. Spielberg, but it's just a comedy of errors, if you will.
Absolutely. I mean, all in all, a fun film. I mean, that is all I have for you on our favorites category, unless you'd like to add anything else.
No. I've indulged enough, and yeah, a lot of fun highlight scenes. Although I will say, while that's my favorite sequence in the movie, best shot in the movie is the T-Rex roaring with the cityscape behind him or her. No, him. It's a buck, and that's like that's the peak moment shot of the movie for sure.
I always used to. This is a kind of like a. I don't know if it's a nerd thing I did when I was younger, but one of my favorite parts of this film was when Sarah shot the dart at the end, shot the T Rex in the neck with the dart, and gave that roar. I always used to like turn my TV up extra loud for that 10 seconds of film.
Yeah, it was always a little weird that like it weirdly went to slow motion for just that one shot. And in my fantasy version of this movie where Roland has a larger role, he would have been the one to shoot that dart and help save the T-Rex's life at the end of the movie. But that's just that's my fan fiction, I suppose.
Fan fiction for some great character arc.
Yeah, something like that.
He went to the island to kill it and ends up saving it.
Yeah,
I like it. I
sure,
like that.
sure. Something to that extent, or at least went to capture it and ends up helping to save its life. Willing to kill it and then help save it, something like that.
Absolutely. See, we need to get a script going here, bud.
Yeah, we got some potential here. We got some.
We got some banger ideas in some of these previous episodes.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so this film, The Lost World of Jurassic Park, did very well for itself for being a sequel, as we've stated. So, what does that mean? That this sequel is going to get a sequel. So, this film was followed up with Jurassic Park 3 that was released July 18th of 2001. And I had the pleasure of seeing that in theaters with my dad. And I mean, I had a blast. There was one specific part or two specific parts in that movie that drove me up the wall when I was younger, and I've learned to accept them to this day. But once we get to that episode, I will definitely be talking about those.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of seeing that movie twice in theaters, and let me think here. You're talking July of 2001. That might have been. Well, no, I think I saw Phantom Menace twice in theaters. But that was definitely a very, very, when you were a kid and someone had to take you to a movie and someone else had to buy your ticket, you didn't just get to go see a movie more than once if you wanted to. Otherwise, you would have seen many movies multiple times. But that is an occurrence where I saw that movie twice in theaters because it was one of those things where you're visiting with family like over summer. And so like everyone went and then you come back and you're like around like, the other half of your family that wasn't on that trip or and stuff like that. And so I got 2 trips to go see Jurassic Park 3 because of that.
I only got the one, but I enjoyed it. That's going to be a fun conversation to talk about once we get there, because that again, like this one, is that's another that's the other black sheep of this family from what I've heard. Other than this one.
And we'll have fun comparing and contrasting the way that the way that I try to objectively break down something that's totally subjective in terms of which I would prefer between The Lost World and Jurassic Park 3.
It is always fun.
And it even begins with the titles, but we'll I'll just pose this to the audience and to my co-host here. Is there a film called Jurassic Park 2? There is not. So, very interesting discussion to have.
Is this the continuity is hard from coming from Chris?
Yeah, the OCD is triggered. The OCD is triggered.
But all right, before we get out of here on the Lost World Jurassic Park, I'll say thank you again for joining me for this one, because we're gonna keep rolling through this Jurassic Park franchise until we hit the new one that comes out, Jurassic World Rebirth. So this is gonna continue to be a good conversation.
Yeah, fantastic. Lots of fun. Always a pleasure.
All right, so before I get out of here again, I'll thank you. I'll thank anyone who's listening, and of course, watch Jurassic Park 3 before you listen to us on our next episode. But until next time.
Remember that chap about 20 years ago, I forget his name, climbed Everest without any oxygen, came down nearly dead. And they asked him, they said, "Why did you go up there to die?" He said, "I didn't. I went up there to live."